Website is called This Movie, and I'm a writer for dailydead.com. And I'm very excited to be hosting this panel because I get to interview one of the modern horror greats. Please welcome to the stage, Shawnee Smith.
I literally sat down because I'm like, there's someone else before me.
It was you. I was talking about you.
Gosh. Oh. Ooh, meatloaf. That was awesome.
How are you? Did you have a good weekend?
Oh my gosh, it's so nice to be together again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a great weekend, and it's my daughter's first time in her whole life, 22. She had to wait for her mid-brother to get old enough to babysit the little brother. She always did babysitting.
Okay, so let's start kind of near the beginning, because I want to talk about a movie that was very formative for me as a horror fan, and that's the movie Summer School. Which was, give it up for Summer School, everybody. Give it up for Summer School. Because it was the first time I felt like I had seen myself on screen with the characters of Chainsaw and Dave, these two guys who just were obsessed with horror movies and gore effects and Toby Hooper and all the things that I love. But in that movie, you played a pregnant high schooler, which, especially in the 80s, was like, so taboo. But one of the things that I loved about your performance and the way that Carl Reiner directed the movie is that there was no judgment of that character.
Yeah.
Isn't
that beautiful?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know what it was like working on that movie.
Well, I think I got the part because I was the only under 18 actor in that cast. So I had to do school 3 hours a day. And I think they wanted to cast, 18 and over because it's a lot simpler and, less expensive. Less expensive.
Right.
And, but that day of the audition, my oldest brother Brian was in the service. And every time he came home, I wore his army fatigues for the next day. It was like an honor. Meanwhile, he was like over 6 feet tall, to see me. So I had my audition that day. And I went to it in full fatigues, rolled up at the bottom, rolled up at the sleeves. And Carl Reiner is just the man to see that and say, she's got to play this part. And Rhonda was full of heart,
Yeah.
And Carl was full of heart.
Yeah.
We had trailer decorating contest for Halloween. And to make a trailer one. I was with the group at North Trick. Anyways, we had a ball in that movie. You could tell how much fun we had.
Sure. Absolutely. So then I want to talk about your first big horror movie, which was, I think, a year later with Chuck Russell's remake of The Blob, where now you are the star, now you're the final girl, and you're acting opposite all of these amazing practical effects. For me, maybe the best practical effects ever put on a film. What are the challenges that kind of come along with working on a movie that's that sort of effects heavy while you're still trying to give a performance and create a character and you're surrounded by all this?
Well, I think Chuck Russell, this is the first time it's occurring to me how smart he was in the audition process. Because I remember my final audition, it was in an office, and there was a couch and some, different pieces of furniture. And I remember my final audition, he had me act out this grand scene, just you start behind the couch and then you look out and you see the blob and you do this and then you jump over here and he was probably like, I'll hire the girl who can pull it off in this office, nothing else to work off of but her imagination. Because that's a lot of time what it was like. Actually sometimes you had crazy stuff to work off of, but the practical effects, but a lot of times I was just, looking at a piece of grip tape on a stick, and like screaming for my, like, motherfucker. So he hires someone with a very vivid imagination.
Yeah. How did you develop that imagination?
Well, I think you're just born with it. I mean,
Yeah.
my daughter was born with it. I still catch her like acting out scenes, and she's a writer-director, but that's not how she does it. She just acts it out, with her brothers, and I still catch her sometimes. It's pretty cute. Yeah. I guess it runs in the bloodline.
Yeah, obviously. So are there any of the scenes in the Blob where you're acting opposite, like the scene, say, where your boyfriend is, or Don Beach is?
I was his prom date in real life.
Really?
Yeah, that is trivia.
Everyone update IMDb right now, if you could, the trivia section. The scene where he's dissolving, you grab his hands and they come off. I mean,
Yeah.
is it jarring to act opposite something like that? I have a friend who once spoke to Jeff Goldblum and he said,
I love Jeff.
was it
He was
scary?
my acting teacher.
For real?
Yeah,
Oh,
for real.
okay, IMDb.
I played House West.
That's very cool.
Oh, he's hysterical. He's sitting in the theater. So when you were doing that scene, you you came in a funny way. Just working off him was. He's awesome. The Fly, come on,
Right.
please. Carry on. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Stand.
He had asked him, when you're in Jurassic Park and you're acting opposite these big dinosaurs, are you just acting, or is it jarring? Is it still scary? And Goldblum said, no, it's actually still scary. So I'm just wondering, when you're acting opposite some of these goopy gore effects, is it just completely make-believe, or are you getting grossed out as you do it? Or?
I think if part of the talent of an actor is what they call actor's imagination. And so you kind of believe your imaginary circumstances. And if you happen to have props like a dinosaur or like Saw One, a chest cavity full of, or a pit full of needles, it makes it easier it just makes it easier.
Right.
You combine that with your actor's imagination and, you're off to the races.
Yeah. Okay.
And the funny thing, in Saw 3, I remember when I first arrived for rehearsals and I saw the set, and I don't know if you guys, remember the layer. The set design was unreal, and I was just checking out, I'm like, there's that. Yeah, represent. When I first got there, I was like, oh man, this is creepy, and I was kind of creeped out by it. And then we started rehearsals, and I found Amanda and kind of switched into that gear, and the next time I walked through the layer, I was comforted by the thing that had disturbed me, the time before. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's cool. So speaking of Saw, in the first film, you're just sort of playing a victim, and then in later films, you end up being sort of like the antagonist or the perpetrator of some of what's going on. What's it like to try to make that switch? Did you know when you made the first movie that they were going to be bringing you back?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I had a decent chance because I was the only one that lived. But you never know. You have a hope when you make a movie, especially, independent, low budget. And I remember when it premiered at Sundance, being at that first screening, and we were all sitting in the back, James and Lee and the producers. When Tobin got up from the floor, and this is at Sundance, everyone's kind of stuck up there. Even more so now, but this was, but still, it was a tough audience, and they lost their ever-loving minds. And it was like, I've never felt anything like that in a theater, and we were all in the back just going, and the producers, you know, just going like, oh, gee. But it was an incredible moment. And you knew, like, this is gonna go on, but you know, nobody knew until they found Darren Bousman's script. Actually, they adapted it for a 2, because they weren't sure, like, where they were gonna go with it. And then it just kind of developed. As we filmed, things developed from movie to movie. So it was, and then I would look back at choices that I made, or in the moment that were just kind of intuitive. God, it's like I knew where this was headed, but I didn't.
3 ends up being probably my favorite of the series because it does focus so heavily on the relationship.
Because it's a love story.
Because it's a love story. That's
Yeah.
exactly where I was going. Yeah, it's this sort of tragic love story between Amanda and John Kramer.
Do you make movies? Because I think you should.
So can you talk about just developing that relationship with Tobin Bell and sort of creating that dynamic between the two of you?
Yeah. I couldn't have been, had a better match for doing that and approaching it the way we did than Tobin, because they loved into him playing John Kramer, because he's so organic, you know, everything has to, and he's scientific, so he will do whatever research, whatever backstory needs to be made to fill out and make it real. And Saw 3 originally was kind of written like, you know, what is it, like apprentice, you know, what do you call, like, master, apprentice, and I was supposed to come in with layers, you know. And in hindsight, I'm like, well, you should have just gone for super villain instead of love story, because then you could have done the next 8, you know. But I had to approach it from a real way, so I didn't feel foolish, because if I feel foolish, then forget it, you know. And Tobin's the same way, so we approached rehearsals with, well, how would they spend their time? You know, they had philosophical talks, and so we just started walking the streets of Toronto, having conversations and hanging out and having coffee, and we went in a photo booth, you know, and took some funny pictures and just hung out. And the opening scene, what came out of that is that the opening scene went from like me coming in a cloak to me wearing his hoodie and carrying groceries. And we just went for the reality, you know. It's like we worked on how I brought him his tea, because I would have done it 1,000 times. And I think all of that was in there. You know, you might not see it obviously, but it's what I think people connect to. The ones that really connect, you know, to Amanda or their relationship.
Yeah. What's it like to play somebody who is sort of clearly in the wrong, but believes with every fiber of her being that she's right?
It feels like a human, like me, like everyone. You know, what else can you do? There's like 1,000 different ways to look at one thing, depending on your perspective. You know, so it's like with my kids, I just make the best decisions I can make with the information I have, but I gotta make a decision. Live or die, make a choice, you know? You gotta function, and yeah, she made those choices in earnest, the best that she could, you know. Some people have better material to work with, you know, but with where she came from and the material she had to work with, she did the best she could.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm